the bullion vault of the Bank of England. And it's just sitting here doing nothing. It's enormously impressive, but it's a bit sad, rather like a mausoleum where the dead gold is sitting, waiting for people to remember it. Because it belongs to all sorts of people, not just to the Bank of England. This vault is part of a complex of different rooms. I haven't seen the other rooms. People buy and sell the gold, and each block of gold has its own number, like your car has a registration number. And when people buy and trade the gold, they don't actually take the bar home, but just that number is transferred from the seller's account to the buyer's account. And the gold just sits here quietly.
Whether you're based in London, for example, our biggest industry isn't pharmaceuticals. Our biggest industry by a mile is, of course, financial services of all kinds. From stocks and shares to pensions to hedge funds, you name it. It's our biggest industry. It brings our biggest revenues. And all of that has been transferred to agencies that are scattered around the rest of Europe.
We've had plenty on Mr. Varzi's.
Although the Bank of England is state-owned, 97% of the UK's money supply is still privately controlled in the form of interest-bearing loans created by the Rothschild-dominated commercial banks. The Rothschilds' modern manipulation of the British economy is clearly evident in this clip, demonstrating Queen Elizabeth's inquiry into the downturn of the British economy.
And he and his group here are going to answer your question from 4 years ago, why nobody saw the crisis coming.
And after a brief explanation, another question, this time from the Duke.
There's another one coming in.
The Queen's question was finally answered by Rothschild lackeys 4 years later, after the Queen personally had to visit the Bank of England to get an answer. The indictment of a Rothschild is not simply another dirty banker being brought to justice. The imprisonment of part of the controlling interest of civilization could gradually snowball, meaning a stop to endless wars, illegal mass surveillance, debt slavery.
Apparently the oldest bar of gold here has been here since 1916. That's the First World War, nearly 100 years ago.
The traditional way of America gets to war is what would be best for U.S. interests. Some people might think that Mr. Roosevelt wanted to get us into World War II, as David mentioned. You may recall we had to wait for Pearl Harbor. Some people might think Mr. Wilson wanted to get us into World War I. You may recall he had to wait for the Lusitania episode. Some people might think that Mr. Johnson wanted to send troops to Vietnam. You may recall he had to wait for the Gulf of Tonkin episode. We didn't go to war with Spain until the until the Maine exploded. And may I point out that Mr. Lincoln did not feel he could call out the Federal Army until Fort Sumter was attacked, which is why he ordered the commander at Fort Sumter to do exactly that thing which the South Carolinians had said would cause an attack. So if, in fact, the Iranians aren't going to compromise, it would be best if somebody else started the war.
The ultimate advantage, listen to this, that the creditor has over a king or a president is that if the ruler gets out of line, the banker can finance his enemy or his rival. Therefore, if you want to stay in the lucrative financing business of kings and governments, it is wise to have an enemy or a rival waiting in the wings to unseat every king or every president to whom you lend money. If the king doesn't have an enemy, you gotta be able to create one.
Yes, for centuries now, there truly has been a global New World Order shadow government family syndicate legitimizing its control over civilization. responsible for their involvement in a seemingly endless list of horrors and violations of human rights since long before any of us were even born. And yes, currently, without as much as a peep from the mainstream media, that very family is being pursued by a French court to stand trial.
Real problem. Now, the question is, how do we deal with issues like this? The first point that I think is really, really important is this. This should be a British passport. It says European Union on it, all right? I think we need to get back British passports so that we can check anybody else coming in to this country.
The dead gold is sitting, waiting for people to remember it.